Hello, everyone. My name is Cleveland Piggott. I am a family physician in the Department of Family Medicine here at CU, and so excited to be with you today to talk about a really important topic, which is how to be a good mentee. This was the original title of this talk a few years ago when we sort of were suggesting having something like this because we do so much discussion on mentoring but we don't actually talk about how to utilize mentors well. Additionally, I don't like the idea of being a good mentee, and so I have an alternative title which I've been using with this presentation, which is how to get them more out of mentoring relationships and tips on how to maneuver through academia. So we're going to talk about that today. Disclosures, I have none. However, I think it's important to know that my life identity and journey shapes how I give presentations. I'm a physician educator, identify as Black Latino male. I'm a child of immigrants. I'm a father, brother, husband, son. I like to make jokes. Some of them won't land, but I appreciate you all giving me grace. And I'm super excited with an opportunity to be with you today. And for, I believe this cohort, I get the opportunity to talk with you all, and we'll do some of the small group activities based on this presentation when we have a chance to talk in person. So, learning objectives. Familiarize yourself with the do's and don'ts to maximize a mentor-mentee relationship. Be able to define the terms minority tax, intersectionality, internalized bias, and microaggression. Identify some of the challenges minoritized faculty and staff may face in an academic institution. Understand the power dynamics at play in addressing the minority tax. Learn tools and potential next steps to better navigate and mitigate the tax here today. I will sometimes say minority instead of minoritized throughout the presentation. And I just want you to know my style is to frame a topic, give some tips, evidence from literature, and create a safe environment for you to reflect and share your truth. And to do that, I'm going to do some community agreements, which will be more applicable for when we are in person, but just so you get a little feel for them. Confidentiality. When we're together, I want you to, what we say there stays there. What you learned about, please share that broadly. Be present and open-minded, and I ask you to do that as you're listening to this today. There's a lot of good content, and I think it can be really easy to want to feel distracted when listening or viewing a presentation like this. And I want to encourage you all, some of these other things will come into play when we're together, but allowing space for everyone's voice, lean into discomfort, uh, engaging, etc. And so I just want to pause and have you think about some challenges that you experience or your colleagues have experienced with mentors. Many of you wrote these down in your application, but some of the common themes that frequently come up are as follows. Mentor doesn't take your identities and life experiences into account when providing advice. Mentor pushing their interest instead of your interest. Mentor isn't available or isn't reaching out. Expectations are not aligned. There are trust issues with the mentor. This could be from past experiences, them having a position of authority over you. Other topics, which I won't be discussing today, that are commonly brought up is the mentor isn't actually an expert in what you want or feel like you need them to be an expert in to support you. And so I'm just going to hit on a few tips based on the items we just talked about in the previous slide. And so a mentor not taking your identity into account. What I encourage folks to do there is take what your mentor says and I encourage folks to have a team of mentors with a grain of salt. Sometimes it doesn't sit right with you. And if it doesn't, ask someone else. I don't want you to immediately discount it because it might just be the perfect advice for you. But oftentimes, giving it some time to sit with and getting another perspective can be really helpful to know this is some feedback you should act on or suggestion you should act on. I also encourage you that as you feel comfortable in that mentor relationship, it might be a good opportunity to share your concern with the mentor of how your life experience may make it challenging for you to follow their suggestion. We're all learning. One example of this in my life is I had a senior mentor who was really at the top of an institution and made the suggestion to me to take big risk and fail fast and try again. But in my experience, I don't often get lots of chances. And if I take a big risk and fail, I'm not always going to have someone to pick me back up and support me through that step. And that's the experience many folks have had, but wasn't that senior leader's experience. I took it with a grain of salt and also realized that, yes, I did have some opportunities to take some more risk, though I wanted to make sure they were a little bit more measured and appreciated this leader sharing their feedback with me, but it wasn't really the best advice for where I was in my career. Another challenge we discussed was a mentor pushing the interest instead of yours. What I encourage to help with that is you really have to know yourself, your values, your priorities, your goals. Because if you don't, people, even the most well-intentioned mentors, will oftentimes suggest things that align with their experience and their thoughts and their hopes for you. I had a leader that knew my passion for health equity and reducing health disparities and just continuously kept sending me information about research opportunities. I kept saying no. He finally sat down with me and realized that, hey, though I'm passionate about those topics, research isn't really where I want to spend my time. I loved education, other parts. He appreciated getting that feedback and stopped sending me that information. But I could have easily taken advantage of one of those opportunities, and it actually would have been a poor fit for me and wouldn't have filled my cup and what I needed at that time. Mentor isn't available. I think one of the common issues I see with this is we have this tendency to ask for 50-minute or 1 hour meetings. And the reality is, people don't always have 1 hour set aside. But also, the reality is, the advice often that people want and need can take 10 minutes. And so keep in mind with the creativity, how much time you ask for, and almost everyone has 5 to 10 minutes that they can give. A quick call during a drive, on a walk, and that can be all you need to support you in making a decision. I also encourage folks to really take the reins on how frequently you meet with your mentor. You guide that process with them, but be the one to take the lead. Expectations are not aligned. You all created this mentor-mentee agreement, and that might be the first time you've ever seen someone do something like that. And it's really powerful as you have it really clear and written out as to what you're hoping for and how you plan to use that relationship. And a lot of the times we just make assumptions and we don't clarify those assumptions with another person. And so getting those assumptions out can be really powerful. And know that if you don't do it in the beginning, that doesn't mean you can't reset and get those out there. Additionally, people's plans and life challenges change. Sometimes you can meet more frequently early on, but something happens and you need to space that out. Just be clear about that. And realize that your mentors want to be there for you for the most part. And they're people too. They forget, they get busy. And so assume positive intent uh, and give them some grace. And then there's trust issues. Trust is often, and I'd say almost always, fundamental to a mentor relationship with a mentee. And if the trust is broken, there's either trying to repair that or maybe just what you use that mentor for might be a little bit more narrow. And that person might still be able to provide some good mentorship, and you can do things to rebuild that trust, as there's certainly things that we have all done in the past to rebuild trust when with others when they've lost it from us or we've lost it from them. And so sort of keeping that in mind. That's also why it's really important to have many mentors, as first of all, no mentor can fulfill all the needs that you have. Uh, but this is another sort of thing where if a mentor isn't great for one thing, you have another person who can help support you with that goal. So the do's and don'ts. I'm going to start off with the do's. Focus on aligning expectations. Coming up with agenda and sharing it beforehand for your meetings. Having realistic expectations of your mentor and getting a team if you need one. Be as open and honest as you can with your mentor, including hesitations regarding advice provided. Know the mentor relationship may and probably will change over time. Don't forget to show gratitude. And the last one is don't self-sabotage. There's this nice paper I like. It's called Mentee Missteps. And a lot of the elements of self-sabotage when it comes to that mentee-mentor relationship uh, is some sort of imbalance when it comes to how people deal with conflict and how people are with their levels of confidence. You'll have that reference later on, and we can talk about that when we have our in-person session. And the don'ts, it's just the opposite of all those things. And so we'll go through some of this reflection, but you can do some of this now. What is one area of growth you have as a mentee or tip you want to do more often? Feel free to write this down, put it in your phone, or uh, have it somewhere so that when we're together, we can actually talk about it. On the on your screen, you see a graph there. This is just a graph from the paper I referenced on the prior slide. It goes through some of those elements of conflict and confidence, and how that can impact the mentor-mentee relationship and potential solutions that the mentee or the mentor can take to help improve that. All right. So I talked about some general tips, and for some of us, elements of our identity have played a significant role in sort of that mentor-mentee relationships. And let's actually talk about that. In addition to the fact that academia is kind of its own dynamics, its own culture, and how do you maneuver through that? And so I want to share a little bit about my story. When I first started as faculty at the university, I was super excited and recall a moment where I was at a White Coats for Black Lives die-in on campus. And I was on the ground chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot." What should have felt like a moment of solidarity felt like I found myself just actually just crying and realized I felt really sad because though I was surrounded by other folks around the campus that shared in that with me, I didn't have that in my department at that time. I felt alone, and I realized I often felt alone. And so I thought about whether staying in academia was actually right. Did I belong here? And as I was feeling down, I talked with some mentors outside of my institution, where I felt safe to share my truth. And then they encouraged me to actually share my truth in my own department with one of my supervisors. Because the reality is, what did I have to lose? I was thinking about leaving anyway. And my supervisor appreciated sort of what I said. They said they felt ashamed and said that we as a department could do better. And really became not only a wonderful supervisor, but became a mentor to me and helped opened doors and partnered with me and helped connect me with a colleague where we helped form the Justice League, which was a working group to help uh, reduce health disparities in our department and promote inclusion and belonging. Since that, it turned into a program and eventually led to me becoming one of the youngest vice chairs in my department's 50 years history. And though I'm really proud of all the work I did with that colleague, having to navigate issues such as the minority tax were really challenging. So thank you all for listening to my story. Through that, I'm wondering if you heard elements of themes. Some of those themes that I was hoping to sort of get out was the idea of isolation, mentors, taxes. And so we're going to talk about those. But before we do that, let's go talk about some definitions. The minority tax, also sometimes known as the cultural tax, is the burden of extra responsibilities placed on minoritized individuals in the name of diversity. This tax in reality is very complex and a major source of inequities in academic medicine. And part of what makes it complex is oftentimes many of the folks taking on that are experiencing this tax want to take on those responsibilities because it seems really part of their identity. Uh, a female identifying individual that wants to do things regarding a woman's support group. That's part of their identity, but also doing that when in their institution or environment that doesn't lead to promotion, they're actually then chastised for trying to make changes in that area, and that further makes them feel demoralized. That's a tax. Intersectionality. Intersectionality is this idea of we are all complex individuals with many aspects of our identity, and those can bring us both power and elements of not power, and also be areas where we might experience some discrimination and areas where we might experience some elements of privilege. And you can't tease out those things, and that can be more complex. It isn't a 1 + 1 = 2. Sometimes it equals 3. Other times it might equal 1.5, right? And so someone feeling like they're being discriminated against because they are a female, but also maybe because they're LGBTQ or because they are young in an environment. Oftentimes they'll never sort of know, but all those intersecting identities can have an impact on people's experiences in academia and their work. Internalized bias. And so we all have bias, both pros and cons, and some of those are implicit, some of those are explicit. I didn't tell you all, but I went to the University of Georgia, and I have a lot of explicit, wonderful bias towards people that went to the University of Georgia. Are some of those people horrible people? I'm sure, but my initial bias is positive towards them. The elements of internalized bias is having a bias, usually negative, about identity hold based on a group association. Sometimes because of either explicit or implicit messages that people are receiving, and that can lead to things such as imposter syndrome. Microaggression, that's a comment or action that subtly or often unconsciously or unintentionally express a prejudiced attitude towards a member or marginalized group. With microaggressions, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, and I wanted to sort of quickly show a video regarding that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second.
For people who still don't think that microaggressions are a problem,
Oh, you're so well spoken.
just imagine instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
Ugh, it's a compliment.
Mosquito bites and their itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while,
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland?
sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date,
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
going grocery shopping,
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
commuting to work,
So when are you gonna have a baby?
watching TV,
We have to keep the Redskins' name. It's part of our culture and history.
or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
Do you know John? Give me shopping advice. I love Cher too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every day,
Can I touch your hair?
multiple times a day,
So pretty.
Can I touch it, please? Can I please?
is annoying. And makes you want to go ballistic on those mosquitoes, which seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares?
Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try less challenging, Major.
Ow! My dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
He looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggressions.
So I like that video because I think sometimes discussing mosquito bites, people mention it as feeling like you're getting a paper cut. But I think the element of how they can have different versions of impact can be really powerful, and it's something that we'll explore a little bit more in person. And so we talked about some of these things. I want to actually show you all some data behind it because we are, an academic institution. And a lot of this will sort of mirror regarding elements that I talked about in my story. And so challenges, one of the things I brought up was isolation. Some data from a recent double AMC, which is American Academy of Medical Colleges survey, just looked at faculty, and about 9% of faculty were in this category of underrepresented minorities, sometimes also underrepresented medicine, URIM. If we were to mirror the US Census, that would be similar around 31%. Additionally, we have very little information when it comes to faculty with disabilities. About 1% have disclosed, and largely we have very little to no information nationally regarding faculty LGBTQIA. Other challenges, minoritized faculty and staff often are at institutions with a few professionals or similar identities, which can lead to isolation dissatisfaction. This can make people not feel safe talking about issues that relate to parts of the identity. And studies have shown that those in authority are more likely to promote, sponsor, and hire folks that are like them. Common interview bias that we know is the similar to me bias. And it's natural to like people like us, like you, right? Because we're all awesome. Other challenges, work disparities, and this can be clinical, it could be other sort of just general work disparities. We know in healthcare, minoritized faculty and staff often spend more time in community work and caring for underserved populations. This can have implications when it comes to clinical revenue, which a lot of times that is a benchmark, less scholarship, potentially impacting job performance due to just simply being too busy. And in addition to the job performance, that can also impact home life because you're too busy. May also be asked to do tasks not related to the role due to elements of identity. Serve as a translator, for example, of someone that speaks a different language. Diversity effort disparities on all of the committees are asked to be on these committees. And these committees aren't considered valuable when it comes to promotion or other processes. Burnout is another uh, important aspect we've seen in literature. Burnout data is pretty mixed, with some signs saying that folks from minoritized backgrounds uh, may actually have less burnout due to just simply the resilience of getting to where they are uh, in the field of healthcare. However, some studies have shown that though they might have lower rates of burnout, they often report lower quality of life and higher likelihood of turning over. They also can tend to be in environments where turnover and burnout can be high. I see this really commonly in many of our minoritized faculty when it comes to clinical environments. Like to work with underserved populations in settings like further qualified health centers and so forth, which many times do not have the same amount of support as other sort of environments. We're seeing this right now in folks and their interest in different research topics. And if those research topics are in the minority, it is harder to get funding, which can mean uh, more work and more burnout in trying to keep yourself afloat and more pressures in that area. Other research we're seeing is there was a study in the University of Pittsburgh where it showed that females and those that are underrepresented minorities both had higher burnout rates. And there's definitely elements of intersectionality there as well. Some studies have been shown and done here on our campus. Many departments have experienced high rates of faculty and staff of color turnover. There's also various levels of burnout in each of the individual departments. We've had several surveys over the past few years, some of all faculty surveys, some uh, all staff surveys with various levels of participation, which shows some interesting data. And I encourage you all to look at that data for your department area to just sort of know what is the current state. And then many of our data has shown actually burnout rates were not higher in BIPOC individuals or female, excuse me, uh, at least at our institution, one of the surveys looked at BIPOC individuals and female faculty were doing pretty well when it came out to some of the burnout data. I haven't looked at some of the more recent data. And so reflection, have you experienced any of these challenges in your career? I know some of you have because I read your Mentee applications, but we'll talk more about this. Bias. Systematic review found that racism, promotion disparities, funding disparities, and lack of mentorship and diversity pressures exist and affect minority faculty. There was a paper called The Trouble with Girls, which was published in 2019. And it showed clear disparities in the awards that women would receive for their work and quoted a Nobel Prize winning faculty male that made a really sexist comment about women uh, in research. Many of you might have seen these t-shirts around where people say girls just want to have more funding for research. We definitely still see those disparities today when it comes to faculty and getting funding from that perspective, which definitely impacts those folks that are working on those projects and the staff associated with it. There's also this paper called Where's the Rest of Us? Which just sort of highlighted some of these challenges that we just mentioned here. and that is that Where's the Rest of Us? That's by Rodriguez in 2004. And so we'll be talking about some of this in small groups, but just so you get a preview, um, thinking about how these mosquito bites or microaggressions can impact well-being. Have you seen bias built into systems where you work? Uh, how have you experienced uh, isms and how has that impacted work? Just some opportunities to share your stories with your small groups. And a lot of the studies I sort of brought up were focusing on faculty, and some of it was really focused on especially those that do research and those in medicine. There's a little bit less data in some of the other fields, but the data I've looked at are really similar. In addition to staff, the barriers are similar, except some of the nuances there are extremely large power dynamics and hierarchies when it comes to academic health centers, medicine, etc. And those can be larger or smaller in different sort of units. Uh, Interventions and support structures tend to be geared towards faculty at institutions. I think that's definitely true here at our institution. Even just the effort we have for having leaders in faculty well-being. It isn't an employee well-being, it was specifically on faculty well-being and just showing some of the subtle biases there. As we all know, staff need well-being support too. And then just the realities, large pay gaps and less money, more challenges. That's just a reality of things, and staff are paid less than faculty. And when things happen outside of the control of an institution, inflation, etc., that can be really challenging for folks. And so those folks that maybe are not from a minoritized background or do not have any of those minoritized lenses when it comes to their pie chart of themselves, often what they're asked to do is research, teaching, and service. For those with a little bit more of those minoritized identities, they're also dealing with diversity efforts, isms, isolation, mentorship gaps, promotion gaps. So how do we navigate this, right? So pausing for awkward silence as you reflect. There's a few papers that I like, and I'm just going to share a couple of them. One is from Carson in 2019. And these were specifically for folks that identified as part of a minoritized group. They really, really emphasize mentors, mentors, mentors. Good thing you all are in a mentorship program. But also encourage, we paired you all with mentors here. You might need more mentors outside of this institution. And so that's really, really important to know and look beyond just the immediate sort of circle or circle of this campus and see how that can be really powerful. There's also different types of, in that mentorship umbrella, sponsors. Those are people that talk about you and want to promote you and say that, hey, this person's awesome. And then coaches, those that sort of show that mirror up to you. To help you be successful. Uh, Talk about your challenges and successes with others in community. That's some of the things that we try to support through this cohort here. Be really, really selective about the service you take on. I'll talk more about this in the next slide. Partner with others to continue advocating for policy changes if you see things that just don't look right or are really disturbing certain groups. Working together with others can be really powerful of making those changes. And not suffering in silence, asking for help. Uh, It'll likely be harder for many folks, but if we don't ask, we can never get the help that we need. Regarding service commitments, here are some practical things. Gather the facts of the request and seek perspectives from colleagues both within and outside of your institution when applicable. Evaluate the request. Does the work really align with your goals? Um, Negotiate the yes by establishing expectations regarding the work. And how does that mean what duties will be relinquished that you no longer have to do? And with declining, remain collegial, describe rationale, and opting out. Um, what I tell folks is I don't ever say yes to a request immediately. I say, I will get back to you. And what I do then is I always either sleep on it at minimum or talk with either a mentor or, frankly, my partner about it. This can oftentimes be things that I actually really want to do, but I still need to be intentional about what am I going to do to negotiate that yes. What am I going to because I want to intentionally say no to something. Because even if you, whether you like it or not, you're saying no to something. It's just, is it intentionally or unintentionally? And sometimes that's sleep, sometimes that's family life, sometimes it's well being. Um, and so I just being really intentional about that's really important. Uh, but I do want to make sure you get back to folks because if you don't follow up, that can be really harmful for the relationship. And sometimes when I'm evaluating the request, sometimes there's huge power dynamics going on there. And what I tell folks is oftentimes when you're asked to do something, it's because the person in power just needs something done. It doesn't mean that they need you to do it. And so keep that in mind that oftentimes they are just trying to get all the things off their plate to sort of keep things moving. And so you saying you can't and explaining why or what you need to do that is not really or be that much of a big deal for them. They'll just move on to the next person down the list to try to get the task completed. And I think even just sort of pausing and thinking about some of these institutions, thinking about sort of how this has played out. Um, how many of us have said yes to something and regretted it? How many times have people said no to something and regretted it? I think a few. mm, I feel like I have less of those examples when it comes to work things. Life things, yeah, but not so much with work things. Um, and then said no to something that was requested by a peer or person with more power and was glad that they did it. And these are some things that we'll end up sort of talking about in the small groups as well. These are some tips about evaluating the request and opportunity. As you mentioned, does it align with your values? Do you want to do it? Do you have the time to do it? What do you need to give up? Do you have the skill, knowledge, to support? Uh, how can you get those? And if so, is this a yes and situation? Yes, and I will need to be able to attend XYZ to get the skills to do QRS successfully. Um, what are the repercussions of turning it down? Is that real or just something you perceived? Uh, and who do I need to talk to before saying yes or no? A mentor or a partner, etc. And when you all are thinking about your career, some general advice I've been given that I really liked was early on, sample everything, but take small portions. You want to still have room on that plate because as you progress, you want to go back for a few things, going back for those seconds, saying no to certain things as it doesn't align with sort of where you want to go or where those that advise you feel like you need to go to achieve that overarching goals and those values you've set. And then the last thing is save room for dessert. What I mean by that is there'll always be something left field that you never would anticipate. But if your plate is completely full, you can't add that on. And so being able to operate a position where if the right thing came up and you never know when that's going to be, you could potentially take advantage of that. Uh, Keep that in mind. And so what I always tell folks is always have your CV updated. Always take a peek at those um, messages that come out about different opportunities and areas that you're passionate about because you just never know when the right time will happen. Thank you all for your attention. I look forward to answering questions and furthering this discussion with you all later on. You take care.